to this edition of Media Talk. In this edition, I talked to my friend Dr. Tekuni Nakuja about his decision to go back to Ghana after his PhD and some of the lessons that he has learned through that process. He also talked to us about his experience in Canada at the University of Saskatchewan, his famous winter jacket, and his entire graduate school experience. Please join me as we welcome our friend Dr. Tekuni Nakuja. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second edition of our podcast. Today, I'm very privileged to have our second guest in this episode. I have my friend Dr. Tekuni Nakuja, who is joining us from the University of Energy and Natural Resources. I call him a friend because I know Nakuja quite well in Canada at the University of Saskatchewan. We are very privileged that he would join us today. Hello, Nakuja. How are you?
Hi, Albert, and hi, everyone. I'm doing very well. Thank you. How about you?
Very well, thank you. It's the weather has warmed up a little bit here, and so I
I
know
can
you remember
imagine.
that. Yeah, you remember that from your days in
Yeah,
Saskatoon.
yes, I can imagine.
Okay, so my audience would like to know a little bit about you, what you do, what's your story. Would you tell us a little bit about you?
Okay, so my name is Tekuni Nakuja. I am a lecturer, currently a lecturer in the US system. I would say an assistant professor at the University of Energy and Natural Resources. And I'm with the Department of Agricultural and Resource Economics. I currently do my research around agricultural economics and trade policy. In terms of my background, where I grew up on a farm. So I come from a farming community. I actually learned about farming before I even learned how to go to school. So that is just briefly about me.
Okay, thank you. That sounds quite interesting, and I could tell from your background that you are an agricultural economist by training. What influenced your decision to go into agricultural economics? How was that decision made?
As I mentioned earlier, I come from a farming background. My parents are all farmers. I grew up farming. I did farming myself. And when I went into the university, I saw that there was opportunity for me to study something about agriculture and in a way that I could use it to improve the livelihoods of people around me, the community, and then the nation at large. So it wasn't really something that is new to me. My background really had a big influence. I knew right away that this is where I belong, or this is where I have been, and I knew about the challenges. But what I didn't know is the solutions. So when I got into the university and I had the opportunity to study a little bit about it, I was kind of like naturally drawn into it, and that's how come I got into agricultural economics.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yes.
And would you say that you did your first degree you did that in Ghana? Which university, and how was the experience like in your undergraduate days?
I did, but in Ghana, what we
Mm.
did was a Bachelor of Science in Agriculture, and for 4 years, it's a 4-year program. And then in my final year, my major was in agricultural economics. So I would say that in Ghana, the system is a little bit different from what I saw in Canada. Let me say Canada, I also studied in University of British Columbia. So the system was a little bit different. You realize that in Ghana, you took a lot more courses, but the unit load per course is a little bit less compared to Canada. But we had more of theory. I should be very honest with you, and little practice. But those of us who came from the rural or farming background, that was more or less like something just it complemented what we already knew. And I remember that in our program in the second year, we were given the opportunity to go around research stations, spend like a month, just trying to familiarize yourself. But generally, there's a little bit difference in the way in which the training is done in Ghana. But that is what I can say.
Good. And if you say that you were from a rural background, where exactly in Ghana did you grow up? What is it a town? Is it a town? Is it a village? Is it a hamlet? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a hamlet.
Okay.
I grew up in a hamlet, and I remember very well. We had just about three households, like three houses, and everybody there was into farming. We were not close to the roadside. When you come to the community, you travel like 2 miles before you reach where I was. So how did I even know about school? We were just there one day, and then some missionaries, Catholics, came to establish a school 2 miles away from us, and then a decision was made. I don't know how that decision was made, that I should be sent to school. That's how come I come from specifically. You asked about where I come from. It's in the northern region. The place is Chamba, northern region of Ghana, and the district is Bimbila, town Chamba, and my hamlet, or where I come from specifically, Sogo number 2.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. So, it, I find the story quite interesting in the sense that from Bimbila, Changa, Songo number 2. If my apologies if I'm not pronouncing the names
No,
correctly.
that's perfect. That's okay. It's
Thank you.
fine.
Thank you. So, from there, what of all the places in the world you could go and further your education after your undergrad, why did you choose to go to Canada? I remember you said you went to Canada. What influenced that decision? How did that whole transition go in terms of moving from Ghana to Canada to do your master's degree or your PhD, whatever degree that was?
Okay, so first of all, when I finished my undergrad studies at the University of Ghana, I wanted to further my education. That was very clear in my mind. And then the decision is, where do you want to have your education? And I had some 2 places that Canada was one, United States was another. Then I decided to consult. And I remember some of the lecturers who taught me at the university. I had studied in University of Saskatchewan, to be precise. So I consulted them. They gave me some ideas, what happens in the school. It's more of a small university, but it's very good for agriculture. So I made a decision that, okay, this is it. And I decided to go into. So that decision was really, to some extent, it was helped, or it was shaped with the assistance of some professors who had studied in that university and also knew that I had interest in going to Canada to pursue a degree in agriculture. So that was how the decision was made.
Okay. And would you say that the application process after the consultation was it fairly smooth? Were there any challenges?
It was rough. It was tough.
Tell us a bit more about that. What made it so tough?
Yes. These days, when I returned to Ghana, I saw that credit cards are not common. In those days, credit card was not common, right? And you had to do the application. You had to do it. You had to submit online. You had to pay online. That was just one thing. So you have the money. You want to be able to do this, and you don't have anybody who pay your application for you, who submit application online for you. You won't be able to do it. So I remember I had to talk to a friend who was in University of Missouri. I spoke with him. He was my friend at the University of Ghana, and then he assisted me with the application process, and that was how come it went. Now, when we got to, I think that was what you asked about the application process, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So that was, you had to also write a lot of emails. The graduate secretary or the department secretary then was Laurie. I wrote a lot of emails seeking clarification. And when I was even admitted, the mail had to be delivered not electronically but physically. So it took a lot of time, and we were becoming impatient whether the mail will be delivered to a wrong address. All those things was a little bit frustrating, I should say.
I see. I have similar recollections of my own experience. I remember, I'm ashamed to admit that, but I remember when I got my visa to Canada, I was so excited that I kept the visa in a bag, in another bag, just to make sure it doesn't get lost. And once every now and then, I'll go and find my passport and see whether the visa and the passport were
Oh
still
yes,
intact. That's
oh
very
yes,
interesting. So when you got to, you are now in Saskatoon,
yes,
um, beautiful Saskatoon. You did both your master's degree and your PhD at the University of Saskatchewan.
yes, that's correct.
Okay. How was the experience like for you from Ghana? How would what would you say was your experience at the University of Saskatchewan?
First is culture shock. Like you move from one society, get to another, and it's a whole lot different. The way your perspective about life, your perspective about people,
Right.
uh, things that you saw from afar, they are now very close to you, and you start to see that no, the way you perceived it is totally different. But when it came to training, we did a lot more applied maths. So the training itself was really rigorous, and I remember we also had some time. Once in a while, we go for conferences, we go for field trips, visitations, just visiting farms and seeing other establishments in agriculture, just to shape our perspectives. But generally, the training was tough. The comprehensive exams, several stages of comms, after which you have to go through proposal writing, defending your proposal. Man, it wasn't easy. But
Right.
at the end of it all, you realize that the training actually prepared you it made you a better person for the career that I am in today. So I don't regret it. I think it was very good. And
Right.
it was a good experience.
And what would you say will be the biggest lesson that you learned while you were doing your grad study? I mean, for somebody who is listening to us right now, who is contemplating going to Canada for grad studies or doing grad studies in North America because the systems are pretty similar in the US and Canada, what
Yes.
would be the biggest advice that from your own experience you would have for that person?
One, in Ghana, like I said, you probably take like 6 courses a term, right? You take like 6 courses a term. And in Canada, you probably take like maximum 3 courses, but the load per course is so much that if you don't take care, you fail. You actually trail, and you are trailing because one, the people you are meeting, the way the lecturers speak, you are still beginning to understand um, accents. My professor, for example, Bill Kerr, my professor, whenever he spoke, I had to ask again, what did you say? And a lot of classes that I was taking. So I couldn't even hear them. That was one thing. And I wasn't opened. You see, that is, I couldn't hear my professor speak and I wasn't opened. So it was beginning to affect my academics. So first lesson, when you go, try and involve yourself in a lot of orientations. Try and acclimatize yourself very well. If you don't understand anything, consult. Use the office hours. Talk to your professor. Seek advice. And for me, that is the way forward.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I know. I think I agree with you in terms of using the resources that are available
Yes.
to you because you'd realize that I think sometimes there's also that difference in terms of the cultural openness.
Yes. Yes.
People
Yes.
refer to
Yes.
their pros by the first name,
Yes. Yes.
which makes
Yes.
them a little bit more accessible
And
Than
in Ghana, we didn't we it wasn't really something you could do. You could not call your professor by his first name.
right,
I don't know. Yeah, so those were really big things for us.
right. Do you have any funny story that you want to share with our audience? Like that maybe, we all have those stories where maybe it was a cultural shock story or some kind of funny story. You have anything like that you want to share with our audience?
Of course, I do.
Okay.
I got to Canada in August, and August should be considered as summer, right? It was so
Right.
warm, but I wore my jacket in August to another. So we had another summer. It was and I remember very well. Lori had a picture of me every time she shared, saying that this is you. You came in when everybody was feeling that it's warm, but it was really cold for you. And I understand. It was very very cold. What I considered to be warm was extremely cold. I wore my jacket every time, and I was like the odd one among everyone. So it's funny
Right,
to
right.
remember
I think you talking about it now. I do remember Takuni's favorite jacket, and
that.
I remember that. I remember that. Yeah, you all bundled up in August.
Uh-huh.
That was
I
funny.
also remember the jacket I came with was not warm enough. You have to give me one to survive.
Oh, you remember that? Yeah, 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 yeah.
I do, I
Anyway,
do, I
yeah,
do.
okay. Well, good. Well, good time. So, in terms of now you have finished your degree. Most of us growing up in Ghana,
Mm,
to put Canada in make a biblical comparison, we will say that Canada is the land flowing with milk and honey. And
yes,
so, after your degree, would you decided to go back to Ghana and start your career there? How was
yes.
that decision made? What influenced your thinking around that?
When it was not an easy decision. When I was coming out of school, I knew that you, as a human being, you can always make an impact if you decide to. You can always make an impact. It doesn't really matter where you are. I've seen people studied abroad, came back, they did great. People also stayed there after their studies and they did great. So it's really about you. It was very clear in my mind. I knew that it was really about me. But then when I take the two societies, the Canadian society and the Ghanaian society, I felt more connected with the Ghanaian society. I felt like I understood what was happening much better in Ghana. I felt like I could contribute a lot more in Ghana. So I decided to return. It's a decision that I felt much more of, feeling
Mm.
much more, being connected to the Ghanaian society. I understood things much better in the Ghanaian society than I did for Canada. That is why I came back.
Was it a difficult decision? Did you
It was
have
very
to
difficult. It
convince your
was very
family,
difficult.
convince your uncles and aunties that you were coming home?
I had to, let me use the word fight them to come home because they didn't understand why I have to come home when I was in Canada. But it's a decision that is also personal. It's about me. It's about my happiness and where I felt like I was more connected. So I had to tell them that, look, this is my decision. I made a decision to go there, and I'm making a decision to come back. You know that in Ghana too, issues of job, society, um, quality of life. You probably have a better quality of life in Canada compared to Ghana, but it was more of me feeling that I am much more connected to the Ghanaian society. I understand what happens in the Ghanaian society much better, and I can contribute here much better. That is just me. I'm not saying
Mhm.
that everyone feels same. And then I decided to come.
So, in terms of the decision to come and
Yes,
actually moving, did
yes.
you did you call some of your friends? How did you find a job in Ghana? Did you have a job lined up before you went back to Ghana, or you just took the risk, packed a few things that you had in Canada as a grad student? Because you know that as a grad student you don't really have much. You packed you packed a few things that you have and moved to Ghana. Did you have a job lined up, and how did you line up that job?
I I didn't have a job lined up. That was a big risk I took. When I was coming, I didn't have any job. And secondly, the government, as at that time, um, no, I think that government at that time had given the indication that they were going to recruit. Prior to 2016, government had placed a ban on employment. So anywhere you send your application, people will say there's an embargo on employment, so you could not be hired. So when there was a change of government, we heard that government had given indications that they were going to recruit. So I sent out my applications and I was following up on some of them. So I just came and wanting to, they needed you to be there present physically to attend the interview. So I took the risk and came, attended a few interviews, and those that gave me offers, I made a decision to stay with the University of Energy and Natural Resources.
Good. That's a very interesting story, Takuni. Really interesting. So when you landed at Kotoka, the first
Yes,
day from like
yes.
what was going through your mind?
When I landed in Kotoka, I knew that I was an unemployed graduate. And whatever money I brought from Canada was not going to last me more than a month. I
Right.
knew that if I didn't cut down my budget extremely. So I also knew that I had to aggressively look for a job. So right from there, when I landed first day, I started knocking on offices. I went to University of Ghana, my former school, inquired about openings because I read about it. I saw the government said we were going to recruit. I asked, went around other universities and inquired, and some of them told me, yes, we are actually looking for, hoping that people will soon advertise, so you can bring in your application. So I started right. The very week I landed in Ghana was when I started putting out my applications, and I was following up on them aggressively. So those who called me, and then I finally made a decision to come to UNER.
So that implies that you had more than one offer then.
Yes, I had more than one offer. I had
Oh,
one
good,
more than one offer.
good. And what influenced that decision to select the University of Energy and Natural Resources? What went into that decision for you?
Um, University of Energy and Natural Resources, I looked at what their vision is and what they were into. So it's a young university with the ambition. They want to train people in energy and natural resources, and agriculture is a huge component of natural resources. Where the university is also located is very strategic in terms of developing agriculture. This is one of the food baskets of the country.
Right.
So we had the opportunity. The university has the opportunity, and the faculties that were around have the opportunity to really develop contemporary programs. Those were the things I was looking at. Programs that will be able to make an impact or change the way we train graduates or produce, impact our food systems. And I was also coming in with these ideas. I knew that if I went to a place like Legon, there was no opportunity for me to do that. So I came to UNER, and you remember very well, I sent you the programs we started to develop. So
I
those
did,
were some
yes.
of the things, yes, we did.
Oh, that's
I was happy to be able to contribute my knowledge or my expertise in that regard.
yeah, and that program was very, very well developed. And
Yes.
well, thank you. I think like looking at your journey and your experiences, I think there's a lot of lessons that we can all learn. I
Okay.
know a lot of people are contemplating making the switch, making that transition back to Ghana, and you hear a lot of stories from people who have been there who talk about the good and obviously the bad.
The
But
bad.
I,
Yes.
yeah, I
Yes.
would want to see it more from the perspective of it being a challenge. For
Yes.
you, what is the biggest adaptation that you had to make? What was the biggest challenge that you faced in the course of that transition?
Hmm. Big, very big. Um, you know, in Canada, things worked, I would say, to precision, right? Everything worked to precision. If it is resources that you need to do your job, it is there to precision. Here, we were coming to the university that had basically zero resources. And so you want to do your job, you have the desire to do your job. The resources that would really assist you do your job is not there. So that, and you begin to feel like, oh, am I regretting this? No, you're not going to regret it. I didn't want to regret. I didn't want to say I'm regretting. I rather saw it as an opportunity for us to also fix the system and make it better. At least bring in some what we saw there. We should be able to. If we cannot make it like that, we should bring it a little bit closer to what we saw. That was things don't work well as they work there, and if it's not, if you don't have the heart to say that whatever happens, I will stay. I tell you, within the next 2 months, you probably consider going back. So
Interesting.
that is it. Yes.
And are there other parts of we talk about some of the challenges as not as negatives, but as
Yes.
things that we need to
Improve.
perhaps
Yeah.
improve. Um,
Yes.
are there aspects of your job that you think that, oh, this is the reason why I came? Do you feel more valued as a person? Do you feel you are
I
making a
absolutely,
tangible?
I absolutely. A lot of students come to me to seek information about what they need when they go out. You have people who are graduating, they want to consider further studies, and I'm a big resource to them. I give them, you could see that the experience I gathered over there, I'm able to advise. I've advised a lot of people. Some people have even gone out, not to Canada in particular, but to other countries. And you just feel like whenever you are teaching, you're able to bring in that added experience you gained, and people can appreciate the issues that you are raising or trying to put across much better. So it's that happiness. Whenever I teach and I'm able to relate it, and I can see that happiness in people's faces, I feel like it's priceless, and that is something I feel like, wow, this is the reason why I indeed came.
Oh, good. And so, would you say that that decision was worth it?
It's worth it, absolutely.
Mhm.
If I have to make it, I'll make it again and again. It's worth it.
And what would be the advice that you have for somebody finished grad school, had this like difficult 6, 7 years in Canada, in the US, writing a dissertation,
Yes.
finished the university, is not perhaps finding the type of position that he or she wants,
Okay.
or has something that he's not fully content with, or
Yes.
like you, has this sense of a strong desire, attraction to come home. What would be the advice that you have for that person?
Um, First of all, even though you want to help society, you first of all have to be happy yourself, right?
Right.
So the, you first of all have to be stable. You have to be happy yourself before you can help people. So if you finish grad school and you are contemplating that you want to relocate to it. If you come from developing countries like some of us, you want to relocate or you want to stay there, the decision is you. Where do you think will make you happy? That is it. That is the first thing. Guys, it's pointless making a switch to Ghana and you come to Ghana and you are frustrated. You won't be able to do anything, right? So make that decision, whatever situation that you find yourself in, make that decision, putting yourself first, your happiness first. And what are your goals? If you think that relocating will help, good. If you think relocating will not help, you can stay there. That is absolutely. Don't make a decision because somebody has made. Don't switch because I have switched. It might work for me, it might not work for you. So that is just the point. It should be about you.
Right. And what makes you happy at that stage of your career.
That is it. Absolutely.
All right. And I know you were not a fan of mashed potatoes and turkey in Canada. So what food do you like to eat, and how did the food part influence your decision to go to Ghana?
Oh, well, but you know that these days, all the meals that we were missing in Ghana, we were equally getting them in Canada,
Oh,
thanks
I
to
see.
trade,
I
thanks
see.
to international trade.
Right.
So we have everything that we needed. But the food aspect is a lot. Pounded fufu is never the same as neat fufu, right?
Oh, I see.
So it never tastes the same, and that part of us we can't take it away. We are Ghanaians who prefer to pound our fufu, even though these days that culture is changing slightly. But I just feel like okay, the food aspect was also something that you miss. When I came home, I really wanted to reconnect with the foods as well. It was
Right.
good. It was good to
Right.
reconnect. Yes.
And I think that from what you are saying that you feel there are opportunities for maybe research in international trade,
Trade.
particularly
Trade.
with the
Yeah.
new African trade agreement, and I think
Yes.
there are emerging opportunities in that area as well.
Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yeah,
That's so.
good. And so, what will be your last words for our audience? We know we've spent quite a bit of your time chatting about your life and your career. What would be, if there's an advice you want to give, what would that
Um, First of all, let me thank your audience for having me. It's been great to be able to share my experience with them. I don't think that my experience will probably be a replica of somebody else's experience, or my life will probably be a replica, but it might help someone make a better decision for himself, him or herself. If you are considering switching, know that it's about you. It's not about the country. It's about you. Make a decision that is personal. You have to first of all be happy before you can help someone. So if you're in grad studies and you are finishing, you want to make that decision, think through it carefully. Don't rush. If you rush, you crash. There's a saying that you rush, you crash. Think through it carefully, make that decision. Be sure that it is a decision that you are, at the end of the day, you feel proud that it was worth it. Don't make a decision because somebody has asked you to do it. No, that is absolutely a wrong one to do. So that is
right?
my piece of advice.
Thank you very much. I think it's been a very pleasant discussion and tracing your life from that little hamlet in the northern region to Legon to cold Saskatoon, and
Saskatoon, yeah.
yeah,
I'm back to
eventually
Ghana.
eventually back to Sunyani. And we do
Yes,
hope
yes.
that perhaps in the very near future we would have a chance again to talk. And I think it's very important. One of the goals of this whole podcast series is to drive home the point that leadership is not just tomorrow. Leadership is
Yes,
today. And so there's a
yes,
lot that
yes.
we can learn from each other and not wait till we are 70 years, 77 before
No, no.
we start the conversation. So thank you so much, Takuni, and we wish you a very pleasant rest of your afternoon or evening,
Thank
whatever
you.
time it is in Ghana.
Evening. Thank you
Okay.
very much, Albert, and thank you to your audience.